In this video, we're going to be looking at a few clips from one of the strangest sermons I have heard in a while. And when I say sermon, I say it in quotations. It was a conversation done at church, a church in Canada, between an atheist who's hoping to go into ministry and a very, very ex-fundamentalist, liberal-minded person on his way into the ministry. But what was shocking was one of the comments made by the ex-fundamentalist and how he said the teachings of John Calvin gave him PTSD. Let's give him a listen.
I was raised in what I would describe as a hyper-Calvinist church. For those of you who don't know, Calvinism is a centuries-old branch of Christianity that has essentially 5 points to it. The first one is the one that's important for you to understand. It's the T in an acronym called TULIP. It stands for total depravity. The idea is that you and all of your children and all of your ancestors and anyone who has ever lived is utterly incapable of the slightest shred of good ever in all circumstances.
Yikes.
We teach this to children in that church.
Yikes, oh yikes.
The theory is the more you hate and detest yourself, the more you will be grateful to God for saving you because of how unworthy and wretched you were.
Ugh.
That's the theory.
Yeah.
As you can imagine, I grew up very well adjusted.
Yeah, oh yeah, that sounds like a very healthy environment.
Oh yeah, for those of you who don't know, buildings are built differently in Protestant Calvinist churches. There's no stained glass, there's no candles, there's no artwork, there's nothing. Because all of that is supposed to be a distraction, theoretically, from the only reason why you're there, which is to remember how sinful and wretched you are so that God is made greater.
Right.
And Protestants.
Yeah, well, what was it for you? What was it that led you to a new way of living?
I got sick.
Yeah.
So, the mental illness, it's PTSD, can't imagine why. And as well as the associated, depression, ADHD thrown in for good measure, which makes everything else hard to treat.
Yeah, samesies.
When specifically men in this organization I grew up in get mentally ill, they turn on you. Right. Because you can't get sick because you have to be the head of your household, and you have to be the spiritual leader for your family, and you have to financially provide for your family, and that didn't end well.
There's a few things I want to say about that clip. Number one, I don't understand what this guy went through. I didn't go to his church. I have no idea what his church was all about. I didn't have his same experiences. I know nothing about these churches that he attended that abused him and gave him PTSD. But I am convinced he does not understand the teachings of what he called total depravity, or what we call radical corruption or total inability. And in fact, total depravity does not teach that humans cannot do praiseworthy things, be good fathers in the eyes of the world. It does teach, though, that we are totally corrupted in our thoughts, attitudes, and actions, and unable to please God. And even if someone does do a praiseworthy deed, it is not done with the proper motive of love for God and the glory of God, and thus it is sin. The Bible teaches that humans are all born into sin. Psalm 51 verse 5. David says he was born in sin, and he was in sin since his mother conceived him. The Bible also teaches that all have sinned. Every single human being has sinned and offended God. So this puts all humans on a level playing field. So there's no room for pride, no room for arrogance. All humans have sinned. They've all fallen short. We've all fallen short of God's perfect and glorious standard. And because of our sin, we are dead in sin. As Ephesians 2:1 and Colossians 2:13 says, we're dead in our trespasses. The unfortunate thing, although this individual had an interpretation of what he thought what Calvinist was, he didn't get to the other parts of where total depravity leads you. Total depravity, or the teaching of total inability, is there to expose to you your need of Jesus Christ, because all humans sin. And when you reject this total inability or total depravity, then you have to build the case that you as a human can do things to please God, which is totally false and against the whole reason why Jesus Christ came. The doctrine of total depravity shows us that we need Jesus Christ. Only Jesus saves. Only Jesus purifies sinners from their sin. Only Jesus brings joy. Only Jesus teaches us true love by him going to the cross and showing his great love by dying in our place. This person does seem bitter. And maybe he has something to be bitter about. I don't know. But he forgets the glory of Jesus Christ. Jesus came into the world to save sinners. And Paul the Apostle said this in 1 Timothy chapter 1, of which I am the worst. Even Paul the Apostle said he was the worst of sinners, and Jesus Christ came to save him. If you are outside of Jesus Christ, today is the day to recognize that you are the worst of sinners, because you've sinned against God in thought, word, and deed. And you need to recognize that Jesus came to save you from your sin. And you need to trust him and cry out to him and ask him to forgive you of all your sin. Thanks for watching, and God bless.